Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, The Science of Broccoli and Other Cruciferous Vegetables. This is the first of a four-part series exploring the science behind food. Through it, we'll explore cravings, hunger, and even shrimp. I'm Greg Berry, Assistant Director in the UAB Office of Alumni Affairs. Just a quick note, since we are coming to you virtually, don't be surprised if something seems out of place or if a technical issue pops up. We're going to try to limit all of that. Now, if you experience audio or video issues, click the reconnect button at the top of your screen. This will get you back to the webinar right away. There's a good chance that your mom said, eat your vegetables. I know mine did. Well, she was right. Today, we're going to discover how a diet rich in vegetables can help prevent cancer. But before we introduce today's guest, I'm going to go ahead and ask a question. What is your favorite cruciferous vegetable? Maybe you're like me and going into this, you didn't even know what a cruciferous vegetable was. On your screen, you have several options, including arugula, which is my favorite, broccoli, cauliflower, turnips, or perhaps there aren't any on the screen that you'll even put into your mouth. I know somebody in our office back won't touch any of these, and he'll be the first one to admit that. I'm going to go ahead and keep this poll up for a few more moments so you can submit your answer. At the end of today's presentation, we will have time to get your questions answered. If you have them, please submit them in the chat box, and I'll make sure they get asked. Go ahead. I just saw a little bit more movement there on the poll, and I'm going to go ahead and slide that out now so we can get to Dr. Tollefsbol. Here are the results. 55% of you say broccoli is number one for you when it comes to cruciferous vegetables. Surprisingly, Brussels sprouts has 26% of the vote, and 8% of you agree with me. Well, thank you so much for participating in the poll. So at this time, I would like to welcome Dr. Trygve Tollefsbol. Dr. Tollefsbol earned his Master of Science in Basic Health Sciences, his PhD in Molecular Biology, and a Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine, all from the University of Texas, before completing his postdoctoral fellowship from the Duke University Medical Center. Dr. Tollefsbol is a professor of biology and senior scientist in the UAB Comprehensive Cancer Center, Comprehensive Center for Aging, Nutrition, Obesity Research Center, and the Comprehensive Diabetes Center. In 1999, he established the UAB Cell Senescence Culture Facility, which he also serves as a director. At this time, I would like to welcome Dr. Tollefsbol officially. Welcome, and I'm turning things over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Great to be here. If I could have my own vote, too, for favorites of the cruciferous vegetables. I also like Brussels sprouts. Broccoli is probably my favorite, but I like cabbage quite a bit. I think cabbage is really good. So anyway, I got my vote in. Welcome, everybody. I'm honored to be here and happy to be here for what I believe is the inaugural talk for this series on foods. I think that's great that I get to kick this off. Hopefully, I'll do a decent job and get everybody interested, and you'll attend all the subsequent ones. So today, I'm going to talk about the cruciferous vegetables, and especially broccoli. That's what I was asked to discuss today. And as Greg said, your mother said, eat your vegetables, and she was right. They're good for you, and they're very healthy. And if you can learn to like them, they're great. So I did want to mention that we've been working on this for maybe close to 20 years or so. We have a number of other projects in our lab in addition. And we also look at epigenetics, and that has been featured on the Nova television series, and also Time Magazine has covered aging. We're interested in epigenetics and the effects of these vegetables on epigenetics, and telomerase, which is an important enzyme that was the topic of the Nobel Prize in 2009. And of course, here, as you can see on the cover of Time Magazine, what we eat. What you eat is what you are, and it's a very important topic of interest to many, many people. So let's go ahead. First, I wanted to thank all those that have contributed over the years. I get to sit here and talk about all this as if I did it all myself, but truth is I had had a small army of helpers over about a quarter of a century since I've been at UAB, since 1998. And these are the various groups, some of them that have contributed. So I want to give a quick nod to them and indicate how grateful I am for all their help. And my wife, Dr. Lucy Andrews, here at the bottom middle, has been very supportive and was a member of our lab for many years as well. So Greg was talking about the cruciferous vegetables, and here are a few of them. There's a lot of them, actually, and these are some of the more common ones. Some may know that the word vegetables means, in its implied in its definition, means edible. So if the foods aren't edible, then they're not considered vegetables technically. So what is meant by cruciferous vegetables? And these are also called crucifers, and they belong to the family of Crucifery. And the reason they're named that is because their petals are in the shape of a cross. So they were given the term cruciform, and that morphed into Crucifery. They're also sometimes called the brassicas, and they are cultivated in the temperate climates throughout the northern hemisphere, and many different types of foods contain these. Also, hopefully you can see a little bit of quick levity here up on the on the left side here. It says we don't have any vegetable jokes yet. So if you do, let us know. Sorry about that one. And then over here, how much does a pirate pay for corn? And the answer there is, of course, a buccaneer. Okay, so a little bit of levity. All right, so we study our laboratory is a molecular biology laboratory. And we do study the cruciferous vegetables and green tea and many other types of dietary compounds. We're interested in aging and cancer and other medical processes. Epigenetic modifications are very sensitive to the environment, and they are heritable, and they control gene regulation without changes in the primary DNA sequence. But I think the most exciting thing about epigenetics, which these cruciferous vegetables work through, one of the mechanisms at least, is that they are readily reversible. So, mutations, it's kind of hard to do something about that. We have CRISPR now, which is new technology and recently got a Nobel Prize that can help with that. But epigenetic changes cause many diseases, and many of these vegetables and other dietary compounds can reverse these aberrations that we see in diseases. So DNA methylation and histone modifications are examples of epigenetic changes. Sulforaphane is a wonderful compound. I really like sulforaphane. It's very prevalent in the cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli and kale and cauliflower and the other cruciferous vegetables. And we just refer to it as SFN, for short for sulforaphane. It is really one of the most important bioactive compounds of the cruciferous vegetables. And we have found that in combination with green tea, which has a polyphenol referred to as epigallocatechin-3 gallate. I don't have a pointer apparently, but right below that, you can see the green tea indication. And both of these lead to changes in epigenetics, and that epigenetics controls the telomerase H-TERT gene. Our laboratory here at UAB was one of the labs that initially discovered that. And telomerase, as I mentioned, was the topic of the Nobel Prize in 2009. And the reason is because it's very important in aging and cancer. And we actually can control the activity of telomerase and therefore impact aging and cancer through these cruciferous vegetables. There's other ways to control them as well. So we have here the chromosomes shown in the left top panel, those blue figures, and the little yellow dots there are what's called the telomeres, and that's where telomerase works, and it slides along the end of the chromosome and maintains the telomeres. That helps to keep us healthy and helps to slow down the aging process. You can see over in the upper right the telomerase molecule working on a chromosome. And about 2 decades ago, we discovered that telomerase activity is under epigenetic control. And that has since been shown in hundreds of laboratories throughout the world, which has thrilled us because at the time we didn't have very much information. And we originally wrote a theoretical paper about this. And there is a lot of interest in telomerase inhibition. And again, I'm giving you some of the science here. This won't be too much science, but giving you some of the background science here initially so that as we start talking about broccoli and other types of foods, will have at least heard some about the molecular basis for some of this. This one kind of hard science, but I think it can be simply explained. And that is, I mentioned sulforaphane that's often in the cruciferous vegetables, and also H-chert, which is essentially telomerase. And if you can see the box on the upper right, it shows that the cruciferous vegetables, or the sulforaphane, are able to decrease telomerase activity in cancer cells. And that's very important because that will kill the cancer cells. So through these cruciferous vegetables, we can follow what they're doing through sulforaphane and its effects on cancer cells and see one of the molecular targets, such as telomerase, and how this actually works at the molecular level. So I think that's exciting that, one thing is how to cook broccoli and how to eat it and things like that, but this is right down to the very molecular basis for how these things work. And sulforaphane is one of the most important compounds of the cruciferous vegetables. And this is one mechanism, epigenetic effects on telomerase, through which they work. So we originally coined the term the epigenetic diet. It was about 10 years ago. And now there's entire books written on the epigenetics diet. It's a very popular area. There's a lot of research being done on this. And so these dietary compounds from the cruciferous vegetables, broccoli and such, comprise a good component of the epigenetics diet. I have 2 red arrows on here, and they are highlighting sulforaphane, which is present in the broccoli. And they are able to inhibit key components of the epigenetic process to inhibit genes that cause cancer, and also to assist genes that stop cancer. Those are called respectively oncogenes or tumor suppressors. And so this is a bigger picture. We see it in many different types of foods, even grapes and red wine, e.g. CG, genistein and soy, curry and curcumin, and many other types of components of the diets that we eat. And this is one of the mechanisms through which they work at the molecular level. So in terms of where our laboratory is going, we want to move the field forward, and we're making great efforts to do this. I think the future in this area, one is combinatorial epigenetics, and that is answering the question of how do these different foods interact. We tend to focus on, say, broccoli or cabbage or other foods individually. But when you think about it, if you sit down and eat lunch And you're probably not just eating broccoli. You might be. Cheers to you if you are, but generally we have a mix of different things. So question is, what cancels out broccoli? Or what makes broccoli even more effective? These are very important questions. Or what foods are neutral and have no impact? We're especially interested in those that are what we call synergistic and that will work even better in combination than alone. The concept of 1 + 1 = 8. And we do see that with some of these compounds where we take one compound or one type of food and another, and we get an 8, so to speak, where it's much more than the sum of its parts. And that's something that we're really interested in studying in the future, how these foods interact, in other words. Temporal program, sometimes people want to know, is when in life is the best time to eat these? And the answer is anytime. Anytime you can eat these is a good time. They're very healthy and good for you. In terms of most efficacious, probably the younger benefit more than the elderly, but everybody benefits. The analogy of this is like stopping smoking. Is it best to stop smoking? Yes. When in life? Well, the earlier the better. Well, is it best to eat cruciferous vegetables? Yes. When in life? The earlier the better. Same answer, different topic, but same concept. So we're studying that too, different times during the lifespan and when these compounds are most efficacious. And we're also starting some new work, which is newer to us, and that is the impact of these foods on the or the epigenetics diet on the gut bacteria. We're finding out that these bacteria in our gut have a big impact on cancer prevention and other biological processes. So it turns out that these cruciferous vegetables do indeed have these effects. So somebody might say, well, I can watch the quality of my diet and pick my foods, but I hear a lot about quantity and fasting alternate days or caloric restriction. How about all that? And that has been around since the 1930s or so. It's been strongest in showing the benefits for cancer prevention. Aging, I think, is a little bit more tenuous, and longevity in terms of the effects of caloric restrictions, very strong with preventing cancer. Problem with that is compliance. So it's easier to be smarter about the foods you pick and eat as much as you want to, as long as you're picking the right ones. I think it's much harder to reduce your calories by about a third to up to almost a half of what you eat. Most people have to struggle quite a bit with that. So there have been studies on the rhesus monkeys shown down here in the lower right. For example, the one in A there, the one on the left. These were a lot of monkeys. You can see the one in the two left panels, a front view and a side view, consumed a normal diet, whereas the one C and D there on the right had caloric restricted diet, and they're the same age. But if you look at D, you can see the fur is much fuller on that one that had a caloric restricted diet as compared to the one just left of that in B that looks very unhealthy. Even the one in A for the facial picture, that's the one that had the normal diet, and he looks like he's saying, oh my, I am aging. Well, welcome to the club, but we all are. But he's the same age as the one on the right in C, and that one actually looks to me like he's younger looking. He's been on caloric restriction, but I have to say too, he looks like he's saying, I am hungry, where's my food? So that is the drawback of caloric restriction. I think it's easier to be smarter about what you eat rather than just reducing the amount of food you eat, but both, it's called quality and quantity. I think quality is better than quantity, but both are effective even this mouse in the middle here looks like he's saying, got any cheese? So that is the drawback with caloric restriction, staying hungry all the time. Whereas with cruciferous vegetables, you can eat a lot of them and snack away and you're fine. So how about broccoli? Here it is on the front cover of Time magazine. I've never been on the front cover of Time magazine. I doubt that you have, but broccoli has. And here it is. It's on the front cover of Time magazine along with some other superstars here. These are called superfoods, walnuts, even dark chocolate, blueberries, almonds, etc. But there's broccoli. I put the blue arrow or purple arrow there to highlight. There they are right on the front cover of Time magazine is a recommended what to eat now, and there's broccoli sitting there. So let's find out a little bit more about it then. Actually, we study broccoli sprouts quite a bit. So people ask me sometimes, well, what's the difference between broccoli and broccoli sprouts? And the broccoli sprouts are the tender baby broccoli plants. You can see it down in the lower left picture, down at the very bottom on the lower left. Those are broccoli sprouts that are grown. You can grow them yourself from seeds. And then on the lower right with that wooden bowl shows you what a bowl of broccoli sprouts looks like. They're great with salads, and they're crunchy, and they can be eaten raw, and they're good on sandwiches, etc. And generally cooking doesn't damage them too much. So they are the young plants grown from seed and eaten when they're just a few days old. And these are especially healthy, and so that's what we study. They have much more of the sulforaphane than the regular broccolis. So why are the cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli so healthy? Well, they have what's called the glucosinolates, which are like a combination between a sugar molecule and a sulfur-containing molecule. And when you eat these, it breaks it down to the sulfur-containing molecule. I show the chemistry there in the middle from a glucosinolate to an isothiocyanate. And the isothiocyanates is essentially sulforaphane, which I've highlighted there. And that's a sulfur-containing compound. The chemistry there of isothiocyanate shows exactly what it looks like. And there's an enzyme called myrosinase that converts the glucosinolate to isothiocyanate. Okay, so that's the chemistry for people who like chemistry. That's basically how it works. A little interesting tidbit here, per calorie, broccoli actually has more protein than beef. So it is, and you have to eat a lot of broccoli to get as much protein as beef, to be very honest, but per calorie, it does have more protein than beef itself. Now, some people like broccoli and some don't, and I'm very aware of that. On the lower right, you can see somebody, a woman there, who loves broccoli, and then in the lower middle, somebody who's repulsed by broccoli. If you don't like broccoli, then maybe another cruciferous vegetable, or perhaps sauces, or there's many different ways to prepare them. Okay, so health benefits, well, primarily cancer prevention. So most of the health benefits come from something called glucoraphanin, which is a type of glucosinolate. And your body converts this to the sulforaphane that we have been talking about, that is really the star of the show here, the chemical compound that through which broccoli confers so many of its virtues. So some common health benefits of broccoli sprouts include cancer prevention, and many of these cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, which is a favorite of mine, and kale, either raw or lightly cooked, can protect against a number of different cancers: breast cancer, prostate cancer, lung cancer, etc. And sulforaphane found in these foods slows tumor growth and stops benign potential carcinogens from becoming active ones. In one study, they found that just 3 to 5 servings of cruciferous vegetables each week reduced cancer risk almost by half. We find that our feedings need to be a little bit more often than that. We recommend a couple of cups or so of broccoli or broccoli sprouts per day, just to be sure. But there's variations in some of the scientific studies. So here you can see a professor in the lower right holding a big question mark, because what I wanted to convey there is that there are some precautions here. Over on the left, you see 10 health benefits of broccoli. Helps prevent cancer, solid on that, highly endorse that. I think that's very strong. Curbs overeating, yes, you can actually snack away on these cruciferous vegetables and you're probably going to be safe. There can be some side effects of broccoli or the cruciferous vegetables at very high levels. Now the rest of these 3 through 10 I think are a little bit more tenuous, like number 10 here, makes for manly men. Well, you know, some of these things you have to be a little bit careful about that you see on the internet, and that's why I put the little professor there with the question mark. Don't believe everything you read. Some claims are made. The science has a long way to go. Number 1, I strongly endorse, and 2, pretty much boosting immune health. There is some support of that. Fights birth defects. There is some support that that could help fighting diabetes, etc. But I think the science has a further way to go for some of those. In terms of the epigenetics diet, well, that's something that we work has been done on this for many decades. We did coin this term about a decade ago. On the left, you'll see the world's most famous statue, Michelangelo's David, probably the most recognizable statue in the world. And with the obesity epidemic and maybe soon to be pandemic, currently it's epidemic in the United States, some have wondered if Michelangelo was still around, how would he sculpture David? And the picture on the right indicates what some imagine that David might look like today. So limit the high caloric dietary products. Dietary restriction at safe levels is good. Decrease intake of foods, and especially the high sugar content, energy drinks, soda pops, etc. Consumption of phytochemicals. These are plant chemicals and food and beverages. Green tea and cruciferous vegetables are good. And Hippocrates said over 2,000 years ago, let food be thy medicine. And many of these foods can have great medical benefits. And I wanted to give a nod here to my lab members too, very quickly. Here are some recent related publications from our lab. I know you can't see all this, but this is just some selected ones over the past 3 years and related to some of the information that I've been showing. We just seem to all types of new discoveries to make in this area. And I do have some great people working for me that have been publishing these papers. And here's some of the group here. I'm very grateful to them. On the left is our current lab group. And then over on the right is our lab group in a lighter moment. Currently we have Michener Rahman in our lab, and Andrew Brain, and Dr. Shadao Lee, Wei-Shin Wu, Mavi Sharma, and Itka Arora, as well as Sabanti Ganguly, are current members of our lab. I need to give a nod to them. And of course, the NIH, which has given us very generous funding over the years. We currently have 3 NIH R01 grants, 2 of them on which I'm a full PI. Very, very grateful to all these people and the funding sources. And with that, I can end.
Well, this has been spectacular information, Dr. Tollefsbol, and we do have questions coming in. If anybody else has questions, go ahead, submit them in the chat, and we will see what we can do to get to those. I'm going to start with one that goes back to talking about broccoli sprouts. Are broccoli sprouts comparable to bean sprouts, or is it totally different?
Well, the bean sprouts come from beans and the broccoli sprouts come from broccoli. One difference there, which is probably intuitive. Well, I may be biased, but I would say that the broccoli sprouts are much better. The beans are not necessarily a member of the cruciferous vegetables, and their content of the glucosinolates and the sulforaphane would not be nearly as high for the bean sprouts. I think they are great to eat. I like them too, and I frequently eat the bean sprouts, but I would recommend the broccoli sprouts over that. They're about 20 to 100 times more rich in sulforaphane than broccoli itself. And broccoli has a lot more sulforaphane than beans. So if you want the benefit of the sulforaphane, then I would go with the broccoli sprouts. They look similar. I understand where the question's coming from. The bowl that I show there look almost like bean sprouts. People eat those a lot, and they're great. Well, try the broccoli sprouts, and you get a lot more sulforaphane, and it'll probably be a lot healthier for you.
Does it matter what time of day a person eats cruciferous veggies in order to get a max benefit?
Oh, great question. Diurnal type of effects. I review grants for the NIH not uncommonly, and the circadian clock can be important in terms of dietary factors. And they're finding that fasting at certain times of day actually can be more effective than other times. For example, they call it time-restricted feeding, or TRF. And so the circadian clock, which I think this question is getting toward, is important. Do I know about that, and have studies been done? Zilch. I haven't heard anything about broccoli, so this is a super question about a superfood. And that would be a great area to study. There have been some on just in general, like restricting food from humans or mice, just their regular diets. But in terms of specific types of foods, I think that would be very important, and nothing known on that I'm aware of. And I think that would be a great area for future research, to look at the circadian rhythms and the diurnal consumption of these cruciferous vegetables, and to find out what times during the day might be most effective. Great.
One of the people in the audience today has a hard time getting their kids to eat the vegetables, but they love fruit. So are eating vegetables more beneficial than eating fruit?
Well, that's, they're both good. Fruit, you hear fruit and vegetables. I like to say vegetables and fruit, but you probably hear fruit and vegetables more. Fruit's easier to get people to eat because they're sweet and they like them. They taste better, I think. Personally, I think that the vegetables are, they're a favorite of mine. I like the vegetables much more than the fruits. I think many people, however, like the fruits more than the vegetables. They're both good for you. I think that in terms of cancer prevention, the cruciferous vegetables are stronger than most of the fruits, although one might say, well, how about grapes that have resveratrol? They're very good for cancer prevention. And so I think both, probably a mix. If you only sit around eating cruciferous vegetables all the time, you may get tired of them. So I think, variety is the spice of life. And so use that as your spice. Switch around different cruciferous vegetables, and do eat some fruit occasionally. Personally, I think cruciferous vegetables hard to beat.
So I'm going to go off of spice there just a little bit.
Okay.
What is the best, most nutritious way to prepare broccoli? Because obviously you can steam, you can fry, you can do all of these different things with cruciferous vegetables. So how do you spice it up so a lot of people can like them, and what's the best way?
Okay. I think the best way to prepare the broccoli is steaming, gentle steaming, not too long, maybe 3 minutes or so. You can't eat it raw. That's one of the great things about it. If you're trying to cook it and you're sitting around getting hungry and got a little bit more there, you can just take a bite out of it. Don't even have to wait until it's fully cooked. But yeah, steamed is probably the best. You can microwave it, and that's a good method. And also, you can stir fry broccoli. That's recommended as well. What is not the best is boiling, because when you boil it, especially for long periods of time, it'll leach out a lot of the vitamins and sulforaphane and many of the other beneficial compounds that are present in broccoli. So I don't recommend that you boil it. I think steaming is probably the #1 best way. If you don't have a way to steam it, microwave it. That's fine. Very convenient. Just don't overcook it. Roasting it, stir frying is very good. Probably the 3 best ways to prepare it are either steaming, microwaving, or stir frying. I don't recommend boiling it because you're kind of defeating the purpose. Many of the health benefits of the broccoli will be pulled out during the boiling process and go into the water that you tend to pour off. If you turn the water into a soup, I guess probably wouldn't be very good soup, but yeah, okay. So I think that's the best way to prepare it. You can use certain types of sauces, but you do have to be careful about that. I did show a picture on there. I think it showed broccoli and a lot of cheese.
Yep.
And, like some people will say, well, I went to the doctor. I told him I wanted to lose some weight. He told me to eat more salads, and I did. And but nothing happened. I didn't lose any weight. Well, do you ever put dressing on your salads? Oh, yeah, I love Thousand Island, and I put that all over it. Well, look at the caloric content of those. You might as well be putting ice cream all over your salad. So I think also you need to watch how you eat the broccoli. It's not just a matter of having broccoli there. So you don't want a broccoli covered with cheese, for example, where you're upping all the calories and defeating the purpose. You don't want to boil it where it's going to take out all the best parts of it, etc.
So when it comes to your diet, what percentage of it should be protein, fat, and carbs?
Okay, well, fat has gotten a bad reputation. It's unfair because there are many healthy fats. They lead to cholesterol, which is necessary for many biological processes. Some of them, like some of the omega-3 and 6, are very good for the heart. So I think probably the very best food is protein. And that's not one of the strong points of the cruciferous vegetables. But if I just had one type of the 3, I would probably pick protein as the healthiest. Carbohydrates maybe is the least healthiest. And fats somewhere in the middle. But for fats, they have more caloric punch than the proteins and the carbohydrates. But recall, too, that I did show a slide that per calorie, broccoli has more protein than a steak has, or regular meat. So you do need to make sure that you get adequate amounts of protein. Soy has a lot of protein. It's not considered one of the cruciferous vegetables, but you can supplement other sources of protein too. But I think protein is very important. So I picked that maybe as the most important of them, but you need a balance of all 3. And I guess that's one thing I'm trying to say here. You can't really say just one and the other. I think maybe equal divisions of them actually might be good for health. There's some like the Atkins diet that is only protein. I don't recommend that. I don't think that that's a healthy diet. Sorry if you're on that, but I don't recommend the Atkins diet. I think it's unhealthy just to get one food group. You need a balance of all 3. And if you're not getting enough of the others through the cruciferous vegetables, there are other vegetables and other food sources where you can get that, such as the soy and protein example.
I think there was a slide during your presentation that said something to the effect of 3 to 5 servings of cruciferous vegetables can decrease cancer risk by 40%. What is considered a serving size? Is it a cup?
Generally a cup,
Okay.
excellent. Yeah, about a cup is what one needs. And actually, I usually recommend about 2 cups a day, 2 to 3 cups a day of this, just to be safe. One doesn't want to it's like brushing your teeth for 10 seconds every day. I speak in analogies, but I think people can understand that. Yeah, you're brushing your teeth every day, but for 10 seconds, that's not long enough. And I think it'd be a shame to underdose it. It also, you don't want to overdose it. I haven't heard of anybody getting sent to the emergency room for eating too much broccoli, but there can be some effects like hypothyroidism. There are goitrogens that are present in some of these. And if you eat a lot of these, way more than normal people would eat, there can be risks. That's even oxygen. We don't live very long without it, but you can also die of 100% oxygen too. Anything can be toxic. So I think, watching how much you eat of these and avoiding toxicity. But I would recommend about 2 to 3 cups a day and variety. It doesn't have to just be broccoli. You probably get tired of it.
Yeah.
So switch it around to other ones too.
So going kind of after toxic, the question is, I'm concerned that pesticides used when growing broccoli are introducing more chemicals into the body, canceling out the health benefits. Should they be concerned about the pesticides being introduced to broccoli and the other vegetables?
I don't think so. There are some studies that have been shown about certain foods that carry the most risk for pesticides. And sorry for strawberries, but it's true. The studies that I've seen have shown that strawberries carry the biggest risk of pesticides. It's just the amount that's needed and the way that they're prepared and how well they're washed and all. There are rankings of that I've seen in terms of pesticide risk for certain types of foods. So this question is based in fact. There is, you do need to be mindful of that. I think food preparation is good. It's good to sometimes even brush the food, especially things like potatoes. Make sure that you brush them and rinse them well. I think with proper handling and getting them from a good source, a trusted source. I like getting them from the grocery stores where they have the mist coming down on the food, actually. I feel safer with that. And organic. I strongly recommend getting organic. You bypass the whole thing. They don't use the pesticides. So in answer to the question, get organic if you're worried about the pesticides. There are some studies where you can see the ranking of the various types of vegetables and fruits and what type of risk that they carry. I've seen the ones I've seen have strawberries at the very top. Broccoli generally isn't the leader on that. But yeah, do be mindful of that. I think organic is the best if you can buy them that way. And if you don't, then make sure that you rinse them well.
So 2 preparation questions. The first one is juicing as beneficial as eating raw vegetables?
Juicing, okay. Well, I think a problem with juicing, it depends on what the listener means by juicing. I'm not a juicer, so I have to kind of guess a little bit here. If you're putting sugar in it, then that's not good. And I think most juices or many juices have a lot of sugar in it. But I think eating it as a solid is probably the best. You can chop it up. Chopping it up is good for these vegetables, dicing it or whatever you want to call it, because that helps release some of the sulforaphane. Now, if you juice it, you might take the risk of, I assume that's in a fluid. Of course it is. Then you might take a risk of the boiling type of effect. Even though you might not be heating it, suspend it in water for a while like that, and even I assume you're mincing it somehow in there. That may release or leach out some of the sulforaphane. So I recommend solid as the best over juicing, but I think that if that's the way you like it, and then I say that's fine. Go ahead and and do that. I don't think it would be, I wouldn't recommend it over the solid forms of it. I think dicing is very good because during the process of the chopping it, you release the myrosinase, which helps produce the sulforaphane from the glucosinolates.
Okay. So the second preparation question is, when roasting broccoli, does caramelizing it on the outside take away from the health benefits?
Well, I think it could. Yeah. You know, it's a little bit like Thousand Island on the salad type of analogy. Some people say, well, you know, I'm eating broccoli. I heard Dr. T talking about eating broccoli, so I'm eating it. Yeah, it's got this cheese all over it, but I'm eating broccoli. I think it's best to try to avoid, I think some healthful sauces, but please be reasonable with that. Watch the sauces. Check the caloric content. Some of them can have very high calories, but I think many sauces and other things that you like and add those to broccoli is smart, actually, as long as you do it in a smart way, and that is by not running up the calories and defeating the purpose. Ice cream on the broccoli, so to speak, for the analogy. And as long as you pick good sauces that you like, great. But I think caramel may not be ranking real high up there in terms of nutritious sauces.
And I think when they're talking caramelization, they're talking kind of just the chemical reaction when you're actually frying it in oil and it gets crispy.
Okay. Yeah, I think the oils too, though, frying, I think may not be a recommended preparation for broccoli. Again, I think, you know, if you make it how you like it, you can't go too wrong. But I wouldn't necessarily think that frying broccoli would be the number one preparation. I think steaming, microwaving, and stir frying are the three best ways to prepare it.
And Tammy's going to test me. I'm some of these words obviously I did not prepare for, so I'm going to throw this question at you. Do you need to cut the broccoli before cooking for the myrosinase to activate the sulforaphane?
No, but it helps. That's the answer. No, but it helps. When you chop the broccoli, that causes the sulforaphane to be released, much of it to come out of the plant, so it'll be on the sides of it, and it gets delivered better to you. In fact, the reason that plants have this sulforaphane in them is as a defense mechanism. The sulforaphane has sulfur as one of its compounds, and one of the things that can give a little bit of a bitter taste to the broccoli is the sulforaphane. So when you chop it, that causes some of the sulforaphane to be released. And the plants, guess what? That's why they supposedly evolved this, because it gives it a bitter taste to the predators, the animals that are eating, even the insects that are eating these plants. Well, supposedly the reason that they have sulforaphane in the glucosinolates is because when the animals start eating them, they will taste bitter to them. And therefore that will help protect them. So it's kind of like a defense mechanism. That's how these plants got started. They have the sulforaphane as a defense mechanism to prevent getting eaten by the predators. So when you mince them, you help to release that, because it's the myrosinase in the plant that then becomes active when you mince them or chop them. You also have that in your body, in your saliva. And when you chew them, the mastication process allows for the myrosinase to be released and breaks down the glucosinolates to sulforaphane. So chopping actually aids that process. But if you don't chop them, which will help release the sulforaphane, then chewing. And they say one of the side effects of these can be like bloating or maybe gas if you eat too much of them. And I think drinking a lot of fluids with them, a lot of water or other safe fluids, or chewing quite a lot can help cut down on that particular side effect.
Is frozen broccoli okay, or should you only go fresh? And I think this goes with all the cruciferous vegetables.
Yeah, I think in general the frozen are okay. I tend to find sometimes they taste a little bit more mushy. They don't have quite the kick that the produce has, but they're fine. Just don't microwave them too long. If you take them out frozen, and that can inactivate some of the nutrients. If you zap them hard enough, you'll defeat the purpose and take away all the nutrients. But I think frozen is okay. You're best off eating them raw and also getting them out of the produce. Do make sure they're clean and try to get them organic if you can. And if you can't, make sure you rinse them. Even if they're organic, it's good to rinse them too. But I think getting frozen product is fine too, as long as you don't microwave them too much. You could just let them thaw at room temperature and try to eat them. Whatever you like, they're cruciferous vegetables. It's probably going to help you.
You noted that sulforaphane protects cells against inflammation and other diseases. Yeah. Would this include GI disease such as IBD?
Well, yes, I think it can help with, it's been shown to have beneficial effects on the gastrointestinal tract. And, there are limits. I did show the professor holding the question mark. You do have to exercise some caution. Some of these things like cancer prevention, I think, are very strong science behind it. And that's the area that we do a lot of work on. It's been the most studied. Others, like the microbiome and the gastrointestinal tract, I think a little bit more tenuous, but yes, I think irritable bowel syndrome and other types of gastrointestinal conditions can help. But one of the side effects of these can be bloating and gas. And again, eating the food a lot and drinking plenty of fluid can help with those problems if you have those. But the studies preliminary that have been done on the with for example broccoli, broccoli sprouts and broccoli on the intestinal flora have been very positive. There's a number of different types of microbes that live in our bodies normally that are known to confer many health benefits that are increased through the consumption of these cruciferous vegetables. And it's thought that that does contribute to cancer prevention and other health effects.
A question, two of them that I'm just going to kind of combine. So the family prefers broccoli florets. Should they use more of the stems peeled or maintain the harder outer layer? And are the stems the healthy part?
Well, the florets are really the healthy parts. Like I showed a picture of the broccoli sprouts. So you could see the white stems and then the little green leaves. The green leaves are the florets. I think that those are the most healthy, but the stems also have sulforaphane in them. The florets tend to have the most of it, but I like the stems because it kind of adds some crunch, like collard greens. I like collard greens because they're more stemmy than, say, spinach or something like that that doesn't have much substance to it. So just depends some on your desire for crunch. I kind of like a little bit of the crunch, and the stems confer that. I think probably the stems are not going to give you as much kick in terms of health benefits, but I do recommend them. And I think the stems are fine to eat. The florets are where you're going to find most of the sulforaphane. Does that mean don't eat the stems? No. If you like the stems, there's sulforaphane in that too, and it's perfectly fine.
What do you think of broccoli supplements in pill form?
Well, not nearly as much as the natural plant because there's many different types of compounds in broccoli and the cruciferous vegetables that collectively contribute or make for a healthy plant. So I've been advocating, sulforaphane and talking about those. And again, there's a whole ranking of those. But that's a complex plant. There's a lot of things in there. And so I think if you were to get supplements, I would get them as a whole broccoli if you can, rather than, say, just sulforaphane, because the whole plant is really the best for health. The problem with the supplements is that it's not regulated by the FDA, and you can get all different types of concentrations that the FDA is not regulating, unfortunately. I'm not criticizing the FDA here. They have so much to do in developing drugs for COVID and many other high priority things, but they don't regulate these supplements, and so you're taking more risk with the supplements. There are some that are not all that effective. There's some that have not accurate in terms of the actual contents. You can take one source and buy it on 3 different occasions and find that you're getting 3 different concentrations of the supplement. So I think if you can get them as produce, you're best off. It's gonna be healthier. But I understand, say you're traveling and you can't sit there, cooking broccoli or whatever. The supplements, okay. I don't think they're as good as produce, and do be careful. They're not regulated by the FDA.
And Dr. Tollefsbol, thank you so much for spending the last hour with us and our audience. And it's been incredible information, fantastic insight into the science of broccoli.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
So for those in attendance, a recording of the webinar will be available on our website tomorrow. Be sure to join us for other webinars in the Science of series. On Tuesday, August 10th, we'll explore the science of hunger as we discuss how to recognize and respond to your hunger cues, which over the lunch hour now are probably really acting up. That'll be with Dr. Jose Fernandez and Dr. Tara Harmon. On Tuesday, September 21st, we'll take a look at the science of shrimp with Dr. Stephen Watts as we learn how new technologies at UAB will not only make shrimp culture efficient, but can also be used to improve human behavior. Then on Tuesday, October 12th, we will explore the science of cravings as Dr. Holly Wyatt uncovers the truth about why you crave certain foods and how you can crush those cravings. All of these webinars are going to be at 7 o'clock p.m. You can register for all of them at alumni.uab.edu/events. I also want to let you know about the 2021 UAB National Alumni Society annual meeting. This year's annual meeting will be Thursday, August 12th at 6 p.m. The NAS is excited to welcome UAB football coach Bill Clark as our featured guest. Hear from Coach Clark as he details his expectations on the upcoming season as the Blazers move into their new home at Protective Stadium in Uptown. You'll also get a chance to be introduced to the 2021-2022 UAB National Alumni Society Board of Directors. This one will be virtual. You can register for the annual meeting at alumni.uab.edu/annual-meeting or go to that events page. With football right around the corner, we want to invite you to tailgate with us before each home game. Tailgate passes, we'll get to the podcast in a moment. Tailgate passes are only $250 for the entire season, which is only $50 a game. Your pass includes the tailgate above the Southern Kitchen and Bar in Uptown, food catered by the Southern Kitchen, 2 drink tickets each week, a bird's eye view of Blazer Walk, game day buttons, and a lot more. Payment plans are available if you purchase multiple tailgate passes. Visit alumni.uab.edu/tailgate for more, or to go ahead and purchase your tailgate pass. Looking for a podcast, meanwhile, listen in at home or on your commute to and from work. Listen to UAB Green and Told. Episodes are released every other week and feature members of the UAB community. You can listen in on the Apple Podcast app or Spotify. You can also visit alumni.uab.edu/Green and Told. You can stay on top of everything alumni on social media. We can be found by searching UAB Alumni on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On LinkedIn, go ahead and search UAB Alumni Career Community. And if you want more information about us at the National Alumni Society and the Office of Alumni Affairs, there's the website, alumni.uab.edu. Once again, thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. Have a great afternoon, and as always, go Blazers.
Thank you.